ever done this before. All right, it's recording. I have no idea how this works, but hopefully this
will just send you when the call's over, it's going to send you a file.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, I think that, your idea to record this is pretty awesome. I think that sharing with everybody would be great. And I was thinking, this is more of a less of me chatting with you and more sort of like almost an interview. So I may take that sort of
yeah, whatever
role.
I mean, that sounds good.
Okay. But man, I mean, the reason why is because the quantum sort of arts collections that came out, and I mean, when we initially met, like it was like it just launched, so nobody knew where it was going to go.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even launched yet. I think when I saw you, it was the day before we launched, or 2 days before we launched, or maybe I don't know. Maybe it was the first day.
Like Amy Elkins came out right the day before, and yours was coming out the day Thursday. After. So like it was like it was pretty right there when it started. But yeah, but I think it is something that you don't know where it's going to go. But then I look back at it, I see all the collections that came out, and I was like, these are amazing series, and it just so well curated. And I was like, I had to dig into it. And I spent like after Thanksgiving, I just went through every single collection, and I was like, which one should I get? And like, I was like, but then I was like, look at the floor, and then I got this more total analytical mode of like, okay, analyzing all the sort of different pieces. And I mentioned before, like I did a whole thread on it, and it's like, how should I choose? And so I had this whole scheme and sort of analysis on it. But in the end, I just bought what I liked. I just bought, this piece was the background of Joey, Joey's piece. And it's like, I just loved it. So I just bought that one. I mean, there are many other ones like that I could have bought. Maybe it's for purely investment. But for me, it's like, I love it and I'll buy it and I'll hold it. And I'm sure, some percentage of these will do well in the long term. But it's just amazing.
I think that even if just ETH went up, right? I mean, the value that's in the piece doesn't change. I mean, if you bought something that cost 2 Ether, and then that 2 Ether is now, at $16,000 instead of the 8,000, then you have something maybe worth that, which is a cool way to work with the currency in general.
Yeah, I do think that double dynamic of the crazy volatility of NFTs with the crazy volatility of Ether and if Ethereum, if they both hit high, then it's just insane. So it's just kind of a crazy ride that we're on.
Yeah, I know. And it's like up and down for Ethereum like every day. It's quite annoying. But well, that's besides the point. I'm just watching like today. I was like, oh, it's looking good today. And then the government starts talking shit, and then it's just like, oh, back down. Okay, I see what's happening.
Yeah, I have like a little bar on the top of my laptop that gives me the price of Ethereum, and so I watch it. And then I also have a clock now because so many people are international. I have a clock so I know what time it is across the world. So
that's smart. I need one of those actually. That seems really good to have, because I'm seeing that myself. Like my meetings now stretch into like 9 p.m. and I'm like, what the hell? What happens? Like I'm up early. I'm out late. It's interesting. It's a funny world.
Yeah, I mean, one is definitely for talking to people. The other one I found, which is especially true on Foundation, is I want to like start a bid when everybody else is sleeping. Most people are sleeping in the world. So when it ends, I'm awake and everybody else is asleep. So I can actually have a chance of winning some of those. So I sometimes time it so that it goes on my schedule versus like somebody else's schedule in terms of when they start the auction, especially for Foundation.
Have you had luck with that? I mean, does that work for you?
I think what I realized, I don't know how much it worked, but it has worked against me. It's like I started it big because I just wanted it. And I realized that if I start the bid now, 24 hours now, I'm in a meeting or I'm in like having dinner or something. So I don't want it to end when I'm busy. So at least time that, because otherwise you can't, if you get sniped, then you're screwed. So I have been more the downside. So I definitely have thought about that for sure.
All the things that you didn't have to think about in 2019.
That's true. Or even 2020 in my case. Like, well, we're 2020.
Yeah, I've only done this year. Yeah, for sure.
So, but back to the curation stuff. I mean, I think, I was thinking like, how do I sort of learn from you about what you guys have done? And I think the interesting part, maybe to start, I was thinking maybe starting from where you started from, who you are as a photographer, and then your book publishing business, which is how I guess we met through Ruben and you published his book. So you have a lot of stuff going on with your art, your book publishing company, and then quantum.art, and you're all doing all that together. And I imagine all that sort of feeds into your curational style and how you go about finding people. But I mean, maybe just for the recording, like just a little bit of where your history.
Yeah, well, I'm from Queens, New York. I've been here probably my whole life, minus college, pretty much. And got out of school for photography. I went to a school named Purchase College, which is right outside of New York City. Got out in 2004 and started to. I wanted to keep artists together, so I started a website, which I wish I kept the .com of, called nyfineart.com, where we had these online group shows. Back when I was using like Macromedia Flash to make these websites, like terrible Dreamweaver and Flash, those days. And, so made websites and just started like keeping people together, portfolios over the course of like a year, and then decided to rent out gallery space for a few weeks at a time to have in like real group shows with the people that I was showing online.
Okay.
So did that for about 6 or 7 times. Probably lost a ton of money. Like I didn't know how to run a space. So it was just me having fun with people, but then like 2 weeks of sitting there, not making it. It's a weird way to start, but it was cool to be able to like build like client lists or just people that I wanted to hang out with, huge list of people that have supported throughout the years. And that's now almost 15 years ago, which is insane.
Wow. And was it like photography focused, or was it all kinds of
that was art
anything?
it was mainly photography because that's what I know, but a lot of people, there was a lot of sculpture, painting, drawing. It wasn't only photography. And then
it was from like people from school, or just all over? It
started with people from my school, and then it just exponentially increased after like me I was working in arts districts in New York City, so I was meeting a lot of people, and it expanded pretty quickly.
Cool.
The expansion, there was no money involved. It was just like putting stuff online and like showing people work. It was like really free, which is kind of why I like this space too, because the NFT space makes it, there's a lot of money involved, but there doesn't really have to be free to show your work to people, right? Like you could just get your work online for free using OpenSea and Polygon, and then you don't have to spend any money. So if you want to make money, it's a whole different thing. But if you want to show people your work, you can do that, which I think is the biggest part. That's what's most important. So after that, I decided to open a gallery with my cousin. I was working at a museum, the Guggenheim Museum, for 11 years, actually. But at the beginning of that, I started a gallery, and I worked there on weekends. My cousin worked the weekdays, and we kind of ran that for about 2.5 years, focusing on photography and works on paper. A lot of solo shows, did some art fairs around the world, and had some fun. But realized that it was the problem was the work was expensive and people weren't buying it, right? I could sell a few photographs for a big price, but usually it was like the people that I had a list for, people that I was around, did not have $6,000 to spend on a photograph, right? So I was realizing that would never change. I would have to keep struggling to sell to rich people that I didn't know, but I wanted to sell something to people that I wanted to be around. So I started to think about books. So made my first book while the gallery was open, because it was like, it's much easier for me it's much easier for you to say like, look, a Friday night's going to cost you how much? My book costs $40. Which one do you want? Versus like, you'll never be able to afford this $3,000 print. Like there's like, you can choose to afford a $40 book, but you cannot ever afford a $3,000 print. And I know that. So that's how I thought that books would be better for me to get the work of my friends out there to everyone. So we changed to a book company after that.
Did you keep the space or the gallery space? Or
no,
did
got
you
rid of the space. No, got rid of the space, no overhead, and just started making books. So
wow.
I did 2 or 3 of my own books before we opened it up to working with artists again, just to test the markets, see if it was viable. It seemed like it was. So then we started to make books with people in the beginning of 2015. And since then, that was
were you still working under at Guggenheim at the time, or were you still?
Yeah, I worked at I started the publishing company. I started the gallery in 2009 and it ended in 2011. I started the book publishing in 2015 and I quit the Guggenheim in 2018. So
Wow. So did you quit it because it was doing well enough that you were fine just on the book publishing side, or
no,
just
I
got
quit
tired?
because the Guggenheim paid me $60,000 after 11 years of working there. And
Uh,
I realized, and I knew how much I was making for them. Like I realized how much money that I was like, we were making the photo department probably made the Guggenheim, I would have to say at least $1 million, right? Like like I could see it. I knew how much was coming in, and they refused to give me more money, so I had to leave.
and so was this from them showing art that got sold at the Guggenheim and they got a cut from it, or like how was that coming in
Well,
from the Guggenheim?
my job, I still do this. I still photograph artwork. I photograph artwork for a living. The Guggenheim had nothing to do with the showing of work or anything like that. That was just me in the
Okay.
back end photographing collection paintings. Like I photograph. If you see like a Picasso or a Kandinsky painting from the Guggenheim Museum, I made
Uh,
that photograph. That's how you see it online because I made that photograph. Right.
wow.
So I mean, it's kind of like the beginning of the NFTs, right? It's like making free NFTs for a company because now they have that digital asset. You know, it's kind of exactly the same as NFT World. So I was like pretty much making, you know, I've probably photographed over for the Guggenheim, I would imagine about, you know, 7,000 pieces of artwork in their collection I've
Wow.
photographed. But I was also responsible for photographing more than just that. Like I did, you know, photographed installations at the museum, sometimes some architecture, marketing photographs, parties, everything they needed. I mean, there's another photographer on staff who's still there. Um, but yeah, I was doing a lot of work for them. And
And like, was that something that you knew how to do before you came to Guggenheim, or you sort of learned it as you started working at Guggenheim to how to photograph paintings? Which I imagine it's like this interesting thing. Like I've heard photographers, especially with the digital space, where there's this element, and this is something I've always thought about personally, is that when you see a photograph print, it's reflecting light, and
yeah,
so I think they process the image in a specific way to make it look good for that. When you show it on a screen, and if it's meant to be shown on a screen, it's emitting light, so it's a very dynamic. So they'll process the image to make it look best on a screen. And so when you're going from something like a painting, which is reflecting light, to somehow capturing that, which I assume the lighting and everything makes a huge difference in the colors and everything else. Like,
yeah.
did you know that before from schooling or whatever, or did you sort of learn it as you were at Guggenheim?
Well, I think that I learned a lot on the fly, of course. I mean, I had a job before the Guggenheim photo, like working in a studio for photography. So I
Okay,
was, you know, I already have like, and plus I'm a computer person. I mean, I had a personal computer when I was like 8 years old. I mean, like my dad and like we
cool.
grew up with computers and I was into it. So like I've been on screens for my entire life. Before digital cameras were around, I was definitely like already working with like computers and like trying to make 1992 Skybox NBA cards like out on a computer. That's like I remember
That's
doing that as a
awesome.
kid. So yeah, I've been interested in the computer side. So color correction is something that I've been working on in college early on because it was like the beginning of color science in the computer
Okay,
world because it was just digital imaging was new.
yeah,
So I learned that early, and then kind of that is the skill. If you know color science and a little bit about how to light something, which is pretty simple. I mean, usually you're using 2 or 4 lights and you put them in different places to make different things happen. So it's trial and error until you get it, right? And then when you know how to do it, there's no more error.
right, right.
So
And I imagine like the textures also, like the very thick paints and stuff would create different shadows if you did the
totally.
thing to
Yeah, it's
that'd
a
be
trick. I mean, I don't really, I try not to give away all my tricks on how to make a photograph look really good because that's how I get my jobs because I can do things a little bit easier than most people do because I know what
yep.
clients want. Um, well, I hope to know what clients want. It's been helpful so far, but there's different ways to shoot everything, and I have a way that I shoot things, um, and yeah, that's what keeps me employed. I still do that now. I mean, a few days a week, I'm still photographing for museums and galleries and stuff like that. So it's a lucrative business if you know how to do it because nobody else knows how to do it.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
imagine it's a skill that very few have. If you have it, then you're
yeah,
good. And
yeah. There's
especially if you've done it for
probably
Guggenheim
I imagine
6,000
that there's
times.
like out of the amount of photographers that exist in this world, I would imagine that under 100 people know how to shoot a Picasso painting in New York City. So
Yeah,
if you think
I
about that and you think about the amount of people that actually own artwork and how many
yeah.
people need their artwork photographed, it seems like knock on wood, I will probably always have some sort of income from photographing artwork.
I mean, just the opportunity to photograph a Picasso, period. Forget knowing how to do it. Like, that's huge. Like, to be in the same room by yourself, lighting it, just you and that painting, just you're capturing it somehow. Some soul of Picasso is there to sort of, that you're gleaming off of that painting. And then to be, it's like, that's like, that by itself is an opportunity. But then to be able to be so good at that, that you are one of 100 people in the world that could do that, it's pretty,
in New York,
amazing.
There's tons of people that can do it, but in New York, there's like, you know, there's not many people to hire because there's not many freelancers that like will take these jobs, and it's really, you don't like, because I'm standing on like a billionaire's bed photographing their paintings because that's how I can do it. Like it's like very high up. I have to stand on something. It has to be their bed. I ask like, hey, like yep. They'll be like, yeah, whatever, do what you need to do. They'll leave the room. They don't give a shit. Like they'll just leave me in their bedroom with a bunch of, you know, the most expensive artwork in the world, and I'll just make the shot, be done, and get the hell out of their way. You know, like that's how.
I assume you take off your shoes, or you know, have
I take off my shoes at the door. I don't walk into I do not walk into billionaires' houses or millionaires' houses without taking off my shoes. They can say I can leave them on, and I'll still take them off. I'm not playing around. Like I'm very careful in people's homes because everything is money, right? Like every piece of their houses. I mean, I've walked into like. I walked into like one of the richest people in the world's house, or his apartment, and like walked in, and there's like a formaldehyde Damien Hirst shark right in front of me, like as I walk into the doorway. And I'm like, wow. I'm just like, I don't really mess with Damien Hirst like that. I do have like one of the skateboards on the wall behind me, but but that's because it was $100. I was like, why not? But like the shark, I was like, that's crazy. I've never seen one in a house. I can't believe that you actually own one. But then I go into the next room, and the dude has like Giacometti sculptures on a dining room table. Like the whole table's just filled with Giacometti sculptures, like tiny little, like 3 foot, like the black, you know, those kind of like skinny black Giacometti sculptures, and kids' toys all inside of those Giacometti sculptures, because he has grandkids, and like he doesn't give a shit. And he just does. And I'm like, this is kind of an unbelievable scene. He has a Picasso that's facing a window, which is terrible. But you know, whatever. He's rich. You don't care.
Wow.
And then walk into his back. It's funny because I'm thinking about this now. I haven't been in like apartment work has definitely slowed down during COVID. I have been to apartments recently, but before COVID, I was in like a different rich person's apartment like every week, photographing some crazy piece of art that, you know, like, yeah.
And just like the contrast of like just having this be their everyday painting on their wall, yet in the scope of the world is just this world famous, incredibly valuable piece of art. And like it is, I think that sort of juxtaposition is always just sort of mind-boggling or crazy, or I don't know, just speaks to the art and the art market and the art buyers as well as artists. It's just this all these different sort of contrasts all sitting together in that guy's apartment with toys from his grandkids around, some crazy piece of art. So
it's insane. I mean, I've seen some crazy things in houses. I've also almost ruined a chandelier in a rich person's house. Like I should just call them people. Like I move my light and I'm just touching this chandelier, and I'm looking at like one of my staff mates, and they're just like, dude, like what are you? And I was like, I don't know, man. They're right there. They obviously don't give a shit. I'm trying to move around this tight room to make this photograph. I mean, you get into some situations where you have to think on the fly a lot with that type of work, but no, I'm used to thinking on the fly, so that's helpful.
Yeah, and when you just to talk about, we talked about like the photography of paintings and just your skill for that and what you've done. When you went to book publishing, did you have any book publishing sort of experience before? You just like dove into it. It's okay, we're gonna do this, and just figure it out on the fly, or do you had some sensibility of like, this is how book publishing goes and this is how you do it?
No, I just did research. I mean, I didn't know anything about book publishing before I just researched. I mean, I was collecting books, not truly collecting, but, you know, like as much as I could on like, you know, $40,000 a year, I would collect books. And really the knowledge I got was pretty much going to Strand Bookstore here in New York City, which has like the biggest selection of one of the biggest selections of photo books in Manhattan, and sitting there and looking at every single book and seeing where they were made, what papers they were using, contacting the presses, seeing like if they were still around, how much it cost to make a book with them with the same papers that I saw in the book that they already made, and doing all that research to figure out how to make my books at affordably enough. You know, like I would contact 40 presses and get different quotes and say like, well, I can't make a book in that country because everything's too expensive, or America's too expensive for books. So I have to figure out Europe or China, which I'm not printing in China, but I usually print in Europe and different countries. So it's like this game of what country's less expensive for the same materials right now. And that's usually based on labor costs. So yeah, so it's like a game. It's a trial and error. And after doing it for like 5 or 6 years, now I kind of understand how it works a little bit more, how many books you should be making, how many you can sell. I don't really market books because I'm more a fan of like the books we make, as like my books are more art project than publications, meaning we don't make thousands, we make 300 to 500 of a book usually. And yeah, we try to sell that out within a year and a half. And then we move on to the next project. We're not trying to have things around forever. We're not trying to sell 30,000 of something. It's really limited edition projects.
And is that scarcity part of the plan in terms of creating value over time, or is this the nature of the rhythm you like to create in terms of the size of project, and then just to be able to keep that new publishing going? Or is there some idea of scarcity or collection item sort of thoughts behind them?
You know what? I think that's all the game of like the art market, and not the making of the art. Like the rarity is not. I don't consider any rarity really real. So I think it's always just about making the project happen. Like making a project that you're happy with, that the artist is happy with, and that people want to buy is what we do it. We don't care how much the book is worth after. I just want to be able to sell enough to not go broke making the book. That's why we make books. So if the book costs $6,000 and we make $6,000, then no one has to pay anything. Like we're in the clear.
Right.
And whatever you sell, I mean, people don't usually sell their books because my books are so good that you shouldn't be selling them again anyway. We work with artists that are, you know, top notch and make some of the best art in the world, I think. And that's why we choose to work with our people, because we think we're doing the best work we can. And that's the confidence that I have in the books we make. So as far as anything else in the back end, yes, books become more expensive when they're sold out, but still only a few people want them. So there's not really much movement. There's not much secondary movement on books as there kind of is with the NFT space at all. I mean, like, it's
right. And then the books are more like, so the sizing of the books is more about demand than anything else. If you think there's going to be a market for 500 books, you make 500. So it's more about that, or is like, because like imagine printing like 5,000 versus 500 from a printing standpoint doesn't make that much difference. But I imagine it's more work, more time, bookshelf space, warehouse space, that kind of stuff that will accrue if you make too many books.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have a storage space filled with books. I mean, some books have sold out, but some have not. So, you know, that's pluses and minuses. But I would say that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, that's a harder concept. Like, we make books to sell them. If we sell them, great. If a book didn't do well and we didn't sell enough of it, then that's fine too. I mean, as long as the artist is happy with the book and we're happy with being made the book. I mean, usually we're making books that we're very happy with. So it doesn't really matter if they sell immediately or not. I mean, it's,
I mean,
the sales are not important to me. It's like, get them collected by museums, get them collected by the people that want to own them. And that's why we do it. I mean, if there's 100 people in the world that want a book, we'll try to make that book happen. I mean, it's not about sales. And I don't have any marketing. And plus I have all these other jobs, like we just mentioned. Like, I can't, like, I am not a publisher. I'm not going to sit here on the computer, like trying to get my books placed into bookstores or any of that, because I don't think it's actually worth it to me. It's more like, if you want this project, I have it. If you want it, reach me personally and I will give it to you.
And then like for that, I mean, it's amazing that works, because, you know, the demand is there enough that you're not losing money, at least yet, hopefully ever. But like, you know, it's great that you can take that position, which I think gives you more credibility and more, I mean, even more just respect from the artist to work with you, because you are prioritizing those things. And then everything else has worked out, which I think is amazing. And maybe because you have the patience and time to get to that point to say, okay, this is our philosophy, we're going to stick with it, and people will respect it, and eventually, you know, it will work itself out in terms of just not losing money. I mean, you're not making lots of money, but at least you're not losing money.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, like, the money part is like, as long as we can afford to make the book and we don't think that, as long as we can afford it, we're going to make it. And as long as we know that there's people that want it, like, you know, we have a list of museums that we sell things to all the time. So we're really happy to have those collections in mind when we're making books, because we know that, you know, if we're going to make like, well, for instance, we're going to make a book with somebody that we like, that I just launched on Quantum, right? So we've already been working on that for like a year or a year and a half already. So
is it Joey's book?
No, I can't tell you who it is. It's not Joey.
Okay.
Joey's making his own book. But
I bought his book on Amazon, so
yeah.
I know there's 2 editions. So I have bought that one. That's the only reason I mentioned that, because I bought that one. You don't have to tell me who it is.
This one, the pre-order will go out pretty soon, and it's going to be something that it's going to be something that both the NFT world and the like fine art world that we kind of exist in already are going to enjoy a lot. So we're just trying to figure out how to make it affordable, because it's a very expensive book to make, because it's enormous. And not enormous.
You need to definitely send me a link when it comes out, so I don't miss the pre-order.
yeah, totally. And we'll have prints available for it too, like really sweet little prints. So it's just going to be we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe the NFT world helps our book world in some way. Maybe the people that were buying our NFTs will then want to purchase the actual physical product that we're producing. And I think that maybe we'll see. I mean,
that's a funny thing that you mentioned that, because initially, like when I started collecting NFTs, like people want to send prints because they wanted to send the print along with the artwork. And I don't have enough space in my house to just put up everything. And plus all the curation review goes through my wife. My wife says, okay, that's okay, not okay. So I don't have as much control of the wall space of what we have. And so I have a lot of these artworks, but the one thing that people started sending me, and I'm very thankful to them, like, you know, like Dino sent me his book out of thanks for helping him out. And then Neil sent me his book. And so I started getting all these books, and sometimes I buy them. Like I bought a book from Omar and his dance photography. And so I'm started slowly building a collection of photography books that I didn't really intend to, but I do like it because the space wise and it's something physical. And, you know, I'm starting to really like that connection between it's more the artist and somewhat the collection, because usually they have a lot more than just the one piece I bought. Yeah. But like, I do like that connection. So you mentioned that the NFT world, you know, sort of grasping toward books. I do wonder if that will pan out and will come out as something that they want, because I actually do want it. I mean, I bought Joey's book after I saw his Ethiopia series, and then I was bummed that I missed his drop. But then, of course, I was lucky enough to get one later on. But
it is going to be that way. I mean, like, well, it depends. It really does depend. I mean, it depends on where you are. I mean, at this point, it's really difficult for me to sell books to Europe now, because I have to do all this like VAT paperwork. They like as a company, I have to take VAT taxes if I sell something to Europe. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm just turning off the ability to buy things from Europe, because it doesn't make sense. Why am I taking some other country's taxes and I have no benefits to those taxes? It doesn't make sense to me. So I'm just like out of that game. So it's unfortunate for the European buyers that we usually have collected, like gotten, like, you know, but it's just like, I can't do anything else. Like I can't, like, there's nothing. The post office has screwed me, and that's what's going, like, that's.
Yeah. What you need to do is have a quantum art store, and they fly to New York or wherever and buy your books there. Yeah. I guarantee that will be an attraction. At some day, I predict that if you ever do that, there will be a reason to come see that, because it's like, I mean, again, the whole impetus, like, I was just so impressed with what you guys did. And like, it's so well curated. And the fact that you and Justin did it, the interesting thing will be, there's a challenge as well as, like, I think you're also very, very much going to be probably able to succeed in, is how do you scale this up, and how do you take it from just you two into the team, and make the team both empower them to be able to make choices and curate and stuff, yet still maintain the level of quality and just the sensibility and just what you've been able to do with that. And I think that, you know, again, this sort of goes on the next question, like how, talking about just your history and where you've come, like from all your building your own gallery, and I imagine initially it was just friends, to actually picking people to put in your gallery, to picking people who, you know, put money in to create a book, to, you know, to now with quantum arts, like there is you've done it so many times. I imagine even sitting with 6,000 paintings from the Guggenheim of just being with those, that is knowledge that very few people have. Like, how many people have sit there and just looked at a painting one by one in a way that you had to truly represent it on the physical to the digital 6,000 times. That must have so much knowledge experience. Like, how do you tie those in, or have you tied those in to get to the quantum arts curation and say, okay, this is how I pulled it in, or is it still gut feel, or is it relationships? Like, you've known this artist, you know what they do, and you've seen them and followed them for years. Okay, this is a great opportunity to transition them from the traditional photography world to the NFT world, or it's like, oh my God, I just saw this piece and it has to be on there. It's like a split second, like instantaneous sort of reaction. I mean, it's sort of prepping the question, but that's sort of like the
I think
the
submissions
core.
work in all ways, right? There's no one way that we think about the work, right? It's like sometimes we've thought about this work for a long time, and like Richard Rinaldi's work that we released this week, we wanted to work with him, right? Like Justin loves that work, like the Touching Strangers work, like Justin Navasano. Right. He mentioned his name a long time ago, and then I had this chance meeting with Richard on the city street. He bought one of the books from my publishing company. Instead of like mailing it to him, I was like, let's just meet for a moment so I can just give it to you, because it's way cheaper for me to I have to go to a photo store and pick up some stuff outside the store. You live near it. He comes on his bike. We talk for 10 minutes. I say, like, I mention NFT to him and say like the like kind of basics for what it means to have an NFT. And then he starts to think about that for a week or two. And he's like, hey, what's up with that? I am actually interested in figuring out how to do something a little different with my artwork. And then we kind of go through like getting him onboarded into like the blockchain, like having we're setting up Coinbase accounts. We're doing Coinbase wallets and MetaMask and doing all this training on so that people don't like lose their shirt, or at least they have an idea about how to get their money out if they don't want to be in the Ethereum game. I'm in the Ethereum game for real. So like I see that it's worth more than me just having the dollars in my bank account right now. To me, it seems like it is. It may be wrong, but it seems like it's going in a better place. So just kind of using that kind of knowledge to talk to our photographers. But to go back to your original questions, like it's different every time. So like with Richard,
so 1 second. So when you met that guy, how long ago was that when you met him on the bicycle?
I mean, maybe 3 weeks before we launched Quantum.
Wow. So it's really recent. So he had not heard about it. It was like 6 months ago or 3 months ago. It was a pretty recent chance meeting.
All of this stuff has been very recent. I mean, there's a few people that I've wanted to work with before Quantum even started, like artists that I wanted to like do my own, like not my own platform, but just kind of onboard them into trying to figure out how they can get their own funds from the world. But so for Richard, it was pretty fast. I mean, we're working with Mona Kuhn next week, these people are world renowned, right? I mean, like Julie Blackman, Richard Rinaldi, Mona Kuhn. These are some of the biggest photographers in the world. I mean, people that go to college learn about, if you go to school for art, you learn about these photographers. We're not like working with, we're working with some really huge talents in the photography world, and we're really excited to bring them to the blockchain. It's not always going to be that, right? We are working, we go plus and minus. I mean, like Amy Elkins is pretty big. She's been showing for a long time, but she is like she's growing. She's at her point in her career, she's going like up really fast. And Richard and them are already at a level that like everyone knows who they are, like in the photo world. It's kind of cool to work with different different levels.
Yeah, I mean, in that regard, like you had mentioned submissions, like how much you reach out, or is it, I guess, a blend of the two? Like, is it people can submit to it and then you review those submissions, or you invite them to submit, or do you just say, okay, these people we're going to just reach out to because they're just world renowned. If we get them on, they have interest in NFTs, we'll do the work to actually bring them on.
They're submitting too. I mean, like they're not like, no one gets a free pass into this, right? Like we have to see the work. Right? Like we want to see all the work before we say yes to people. There's like a contract that people need to sign. So we need to know that like we're all on the same page. So we talk to artists for like a while before we get them onboarded. So everyone submits, meaning like everyone submits. There's no like,
so
hey,
for the very famous, to the very
no. We're
starting out.
we're working with people that have some of the like best photographs in the world, and we just can't. Sometimes we just don't want to work with that artist, you know?
Right.
It just doesn't make sense for our program right now. And it's not like they make great work. It just doesn't work here, you know? For us, I am like Justin and I, and now we have a new curator on staff named Rula Saikali out of Berkeley.
Cool.
And we all have an idea about what we want, and we're just trying to figure out what makes sense. Like, you know, like, it's hard to say. We want to be pretty diverse with what we're showing on the chain as well. Like, we don't want to only show like, you know, we can't only show portraits or only show landscapes or only show this type of thing. We're like, we want to show all sorts of different types of photography and from different parts of the world and with different artists from different parts of the world too, right? So it's really great to work with like Joey, or like Joey living in Ethiopia, or, you know, Mona living in California, or Julie living in the middle of the country. And like, we will have people working, you know, it's going to get really, it's going to get really cool really quickly. I mean, the work that you've seen already is really great. We have some really December, the rest of this month. I mean, it's December 1st. We've only run this company publicly for a month as of tomorrow. We're pretty new still. And the next 4 drops, I mean, are outstanding. I mean, this year is outstanding. Next year, I mean, it's just like, we're working with artists that I think are some of the best artists in the world. And I'm really happy to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's only been a month. I mean, and I had this I built this sort of ranking thing to rank all the photography collections by volume. Number 1 is Justin with his, you know, Twin Flames. Number 2 is Isaac Wright, Drifter at number 2, or Where My Vans Go. And number 3, just after 1 month by volume, is Quantum, curated. If you're going to do those 4, I wonder if you'll overtake Justin in terms of pure volume. I mean, by next year, it's going to be insane. Like, that's the thing you hope for, is that, you know, you hope that not Justin's the only one that does well, but that whatever this quantum thing becomes even bigger than him. And I imagine it's a dream, is to make photography this, you know, just to bring it to the right level that is respected in the NFT world, as, you know, that should be. And with the first month out, it's amazing what you've gotten so far.
We will definitely, Quantum as a whole better take over Justin's spot at number 1. I mean, there's a lot of artists. There's a lot of artists that we're bringing to this chain, and there's going to be so many assets that it wouldn't make sense for his to still be worth the most, right? I mean,
yeah,
we'll see. I mean, people still have to kind of, you know, trust that we are bringing work that we think is some of the best in the world, and they have to trust that that's true. So, you know, it's all about our clientele. We try to be good to our collectors. We have our Discord channel, which is always pumping. There's always people in there talking. So that's really, really huge. A big presence there. And yeah, I mean, we've been good so far, and hopefully the next 2 weeks go well. And then the 3 weeks after that, I mean, what do you do for Christmas? We have a cool launch for Christmas that I think is really fun. And maybe it's we're trying to figure it all out. I mean, it's been fun so far, for sure.
So when you go through a review process, like, share as much or as little as you want. This is not to try to reveal this. There's some sort of secret sauce that's sort of, you know, just part of the way the magic works.
Yeah.
But like, what's the process like? Do you go through like, so you're always continually ranking all the submissions, and then you pick, okay, this is the one, or you have a rhythm, I want to get 1 out per week, and we have it planned out for the next month or 2, or just like, whenever a good one comes up, we'll put it out. It's more.
There's 2 different veins. I mean, it's like 2 different veins to it. Like, we have a schedule that's once a week for, you know, the foreseeable future. So it's not a lot of space, right? Like, once a week for the amount of, I mean, we've already gotten, I would imagine, about 150 submissions in the last 3 weeks.
Wow.
Which is maybe not a lot, but it's a lot to answer, right? Like, I have to answer 150 emails in the right way. So we're adding them up. I mean, to start, we're just kind of getting, you know, we're only a month into a brand new business. So, and we've only launched for 4 weeks so far. So, you know, it's difficult process. I mean, but pretty much what's happening is we're getting submissions into our website. We have on our artist page on our website, you can submit. I mean, meaning you can like look at all the information that you need to submit, and then you can submit by email. And we look at all those emails. We're going through the emails. We star some. We tell some people it's not going to work out. And, you know, we also push some people towards the community section, which we're building out next.
Okay.
But, you know, that's going to start really heavy in the next week or two, where we start to get back to all those artists and say like, there's space, there's not. I think, but the schedule's so tight, meaning we have to be a few months ahead of our scheduling, right? Like we can't just work with artists that want to work like next week with us, like we have to do our due diligence, get file sizes correct, naming of all the files, project statements, artist statements, getting the artists on, if they're not on Twitter, getting them a Twitter presence. If they're not on Discord, building a Discord presence. There's a lot of steps to what we're doing in the back end to try to like just release the images online, right? It's not just like, hey, artists, let's get those 30 pictures up tomorrow and then we can launch it. It's like it's a true process, and it takes a full team of people talking to those artists. Like, so when an artist comes to us, I will talk to them. My curator Rula will talk to them, and then like they'll have conversation with Jonas. They'll have a conversation with Justin. They'll have a Twitter Spaces with all of us. They'll have like, there's a lot of interaction. It's like we're building a community, so it takes a lot. I would say that curation has been fluid so far, just because we've had some really great people submit. And people that were just like, wow, thank you so much for submitting. This work is really excellent. What I would say about submission is that what I think is important to tell people is everyone there's a lot of people making really great artwork out there. We want to focus on the artwork that can change the world, right? We want to focus on art that has more of a meaning than just the art itself, like that can actually move a person, right? There's a lot of people making work that is just about like, oh, here's 50 portraits of random people in the world. Like those may be really beautiful, but if there's no story behind it, if there's no connection to like what it means, what's the life of these people? Why are you photographing these people? Is it just people? Or is it like, am I making 50 landscapes of just like, beautiful landscapes? Beautiful landscapes, a beautiful landscape. I think that you should be able to sell whatever you want. You're an artist, do what you want. But for our presence right now, as we're building our collection, building our curatorial space, is keeping it pretty tight. Figuring out like what is the best of the art world that we can bring to the blockchain that doesn't become just a scrolling Instagram fest. Like if you're looking at something and you're just like, oh, well, whatever, like we're trying to make it that you stop every single time you see another image. And I think that's kind of where, that's a struggle. But we're willing to like kind of go down with that ship just because we want to be showing people work that they haven't even thought about before,
Yeah, I mean, I think that the two things that sort of popped out to me, one from earlier, but now, like, is that there's a very strong mission. It's not just great photography, because there's a lot of, like you said, great photography, but you have a very focused mission, and you're trying to, in order to achieve that mission, you have to sort of, both from a diversity standpoint of just types of art as well as impact. I'm sure like global impact and just world sort of exposure is important, and I'm sure just just the different kind of diversity elements are important to make that message. Like, how are these people changing? And photography as well as just the general perception and truth about the world. And if you don't fit in that mission, then even if it's great, it's not for the quantum art collection. And I think is that mission statement written somewhere? Like, here's our mission of what we are trying to do, or is that something that's sort of coming together and sort of formulating as you guys kick off just a month in?
It's very difficult to kind of lock that down so early into our process of being a company. I mean, I have a mission statement for my other companies that we run, that I run, but for this one, it has to be more open than just I like this, I don't like this, right? We can't curate like that. It can't just be just my like personal preferences on photography, because I am a snob and I think that there's a lot of bad and only a few good. So I would never be able to fill up our statement. I would just, no, I mean, I'm just kidding. But no, we rely on our team. Our 3 curators is enough to kind of get us art that we think is special, that maybe you haven't quite seen like this before. I mean, everything has been made. The history of photography is vast, and you can always link things that are made today to the past and artists that made it before. But we're trying to say like, this art is a progression of the past, not just a repetition. So I think that is kind of what, that could be our artist, like our statement. Like, we're here not to repeat the past, but to like form a new, a new path through the future. Yeah, so that's what I would say about curation. It's so loose, that kind of wording is so not concrete that it will not help you if you want to apply or not, you know.
I mean, the other thing that just think about this, like you just sort of talked about a little bit there, is like there is a lot of onboarding to get on the blockchain, and the fact you guys are doing so much, not only from purely setting up the wallets, but also saying here's what communities you need to be part of, like a Twitter and Discord and everything else, so that you can at least connect with the people that might be buying your art or the community at large. And that is a big part, for at least for me, it's a big part of NFTs is this community and the interactions with people. And that's how I get to meet people like you and like other people.
Yeah,
And it's the
totally.
part that I enjoy and is
Yeah.
why it's keeping me here. If it was just buying the art, maybe I would have stayed and left. But because of these interactions at this depth, like it is nothing like I've ever seen before. And the fact that you're doing that, I think is key to make them successful, because just saying here's your art, put on the website and say
Yeah, no, it
buy
can't be
button
that way.
is not gonna be enough.
Yeah, it definitely can't be that way. So it's a lot of, yeah, you're right. This is a community. This is a true community. Like I remember back in the, 10 years ago in New York City, there was community on the streets and galleries. Like you could go to shows and you could see random people you haven't seen in 6 months at a show, or like there was something there, and that kind of died out a few years ago in New York City. You can't do that anymore. It just doesn't happen the same way. Maybe
Because
it's
of
my
COVID,
age.
I assume. Is it
No,
COVID or
it was dead way before COVID. And I think that it was like, there's a few reasons why it's dead. I mean, we don't have to get into that, but like I saw it dying and I was like, well, it's time to not run a gallery anymore. It's time to like get out and try to something different. But there was nothing different. So the city's art world, kind of like the lower end people that were trying to get in realized that there was no way for them to get in. There was like, if you were, most of there's a lot of artists here that are just art handlers in museums now, and it's just, it's hard to show. It's hard to get a show anywhere because there's so many artists, and it became impossible at some point to get a show because there was just like every gallery had their stable of artists and we're not looking for new ones. So it became like, why am I even trying this game? Right. Like, so the internet world has blown that apart. You can build your own community and you can find your own income. Right? I mean, like I know 2 or 3 people that don't take day jobs anymore because they rather sell NFTs and make their money that way so that they can actually just make work for a living.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that's like empowering, man. That's like so empowering.
And is a vibe that you felt like in New York back then when the people were hanging out with galleries and stuff, do you feel the same vibe in the NFT community today? Is that similar, or is it totally different or even bigger? Like how does those two compare in terms of the vibe between the two communities?
Well, this vibe is worldwide now, right? I mean, we're talking about like true worldwide shit. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
It's like it's a new world. This is definitely new. This not happened before in this way, especially, I'm still exist kind of in this photography section. So I don't even know. I mean, I don't even know about all the NFT pieces, right? Like I'm still learning about what a DAO is. Like there's so many different DAOs. I don't even know all of what it means to be a DAO. So I'm trying to learn. I'm learning as we go for sure. And I'm only like 9 months into learning about NFTs. So I think it will take a little longer, but having this presence in the quantum and other stuff that I'm about to launch I'm building. I'm trying to figure out like how to make sure that, I'm staying on top of the game as much as possible. I mean, there's a lot of people about to be onboarded into the system. There's a ton of people coming. So, so we got to be ready for that. I mean, the artists that are already on the chain, you got to push it now, because in 6 months, there's going to be 1 million more artists here, and it's going to be a gulf.
I mean, it's interesting to say that. I mean, it is. I totally agree. It's like nothing I've ever seen before, and at a scale I've never seen before. But just like there was a point in which it's hard to get into any gallery, like you saw in New York, at some point it will happen also in NFT world. So finding a way to somehow build the tools and the communities and sort of the structure now to allow that to still have entry later on in these sub communities or something. Like
I think you have to do it. Yeah. You have to be part of the community, but you do not have to be showing on a platform. I think that you can sell yourself. But as long as you have a community behind you that trusts you, then you can sell yourself. Like you don't, like, no artist needs quantum. They could build their own community and sell as much as we sell for them if they did it themselves, right? you know, we just kind of have this, we're doing what we want to do. We have our own platform. We're trying to work it the way we want to work it. Right. And we will grow exponentially over the course of next year. So I would say stay tuned. I actually, you know, I only have 5 more minutes. So if you have actual questions, I can like speed round those.
I mean, these are all big questions. I'm sort of like just sort of steering the conversation toward the end of thing, which is like initially it was just about your history and where you came from, and then your creational sort of process within quantum. And then you're sort of actually going into what I wanted to do last, which is looking toward the future and what's happening next and where do you think it might go. And I think that, you know, the one thing I can think about that's more about impact for you guys, like, you know, you guys are fairly small, you're gonna do 1 a week, but it's gonna grow and it's gonna be interesting. But aside from just purely your quantum art sort of, you know, collections and the curation and what you guys are doing for those artists, I do think, given what you guys have achieved even in a month, and also Justin's sort of he's just OG for the whole idea of collections and twin flames and stuff. Yeah. You are a leader within the community. You are people that people look up to, and what you do, people will look at and model and be affected by your opinions, your movements and stuff. I think because you've done so well and people respect you. I mean, how do you, if someone were to look at you and what you guys are doing, maybe 6 months, a year from now, like what would your impact on the NFT community at large, specifically photography, but I think you'll have an impact on all of NFTs. What impact do you want to see from not just within the artists you onboard and sort of and succeed in that way in the sort of mission of just changing the world through photography, but you will probably change the world of NFTs. Like, what is it that you hope or wish you would see 6 months from now?
I'll take diversity over everything else. Meaning diversity, you know, diversity and, you know, people of color on the chain, women minting. I mean, I think that those percentages are way down, right? Like it's like 90% men in this NFT world right now, 90% I think white men. So no, I mean, we work with white men too, but like we're definitely, but we're here to, you know, we want to show the world that there is a true diversification in beautiful art, right? Like there are a lot of people making great work, and we are trying to make sure that we stay diverse in that choosing of the work.
And you hope that, I 100% agree with that. I've definitely had a keen eye on that as I've done stuff too. Mm-hmm. That's great. Why don't we, there's only a couple minutes left. Why don't we finish off with the piece behind you, your piece you know.
So first off, this gun here is made by a dude named Nathan Vincent, who's an amazing artist out of the West Coast. And that's crocheted gun. So he crochets kind of amazing things. I guess you can't really tell that it's not.
I know. I thought it was a real gun up there, but like, I guess it's a crochet gun.
I'm sure everyone else outside thinks it's a real gun too. I haven't had that conversation with anybody yet, but you know, one day I'm sure that the building will call me like, hey, you're not allowed to have guns here. Anyway, but yeah, this piece over here, last year, I went on a road with National Geographic to photograph Confederate monuments across the South. So I went on a 4,000, well, probably more like 5,000 mile road trip from Virginia down south to, well, pretty much drove from Virginia or DC to Selma, Alabama, and then north through Tennessee and Kentucky, back through West Virginia, and photographed over 200 Confederate monuments. I released them as a series named The Southern Horror, and I had some other photographs in a series named Latency. I'm making a book project with all this work now, but that was it was National Geographic hired me for this big, two long road trips. And I was able to make some really photographs that cannot be made now because these sculptures are all gone. So it was like the last.
It's an amazing collection. It's an amazing collection. I mean, it's just powerful because of the simplicity. It seems normal, but in the context of history and where you were and what you were doing, it is just so powerful.
It was for sure the right moment at the right time. I mean, like I got a call from Nat Geo probably the week before I got on the road to make these photographs in the middle of the height of COVID in the South. So you know, there was a lot of shit going on. But I had fun doing it. Well, like just was on the road with friends, like one friend at a time, and just like stayed in the most Airbnbs I've ever stayed in my whole life.
I'm sure you have great feedback for Airbnb on improve their product.
Yeah, I have some words. It It was usually fine, but it's like, don't make me sign up for an app to get into the door of a house. Like that shit is out. I do not want to do that. I don't want to give an email address and set up a password and all this shit to like get into your house one day. Like that is like such a waste for me. But you know, that's how it goes. What are you gonna do? It's the little things.
Yeah. And so the photograph to your, I guess to your left, my right, is which it's just a Confederate monument, and I assumed you projected on there.
Yeah, so this is a monument named it was a Robert E. Lee monument in Richmond, Virginia, and this was during these George Floyd protests from last summer. A dude named Dustin Klein, who runs a company named Videometry, decided to go around the city of Richmond all summer. I think he still does it, and project people that have been murdered by police officers or murdered by like in racist ways.
Right.
And this night he had these projections of George Floyd and about 50 other Black people on there. So I just stood in one place, made all the photographs, and then came up with a few good ones. So thanks to Dustin. I mean, without him, I would not have these photographs. I mean, it was on the cover of Nat Geo in January. So I really thank him for, you know, giving me that like kind of random ass opportunity, you know.
Wow. I thought you might have done it on purpose, but it was actually just some other artist that you'd captured in the moment by being there.
No, I don't. Landscapes, they exist the way they exist. I don't change them.
Wow. I mean, it's to landscape stuff, like your work is so diverse too. Like the ones you did of Hong Kong and different ones, like there's still a through line that says this is a Kris Graves piece, but like they're very diverse. I think the simplicity, I think, is always striking to me, but I think the landscape, you know, you think about landscapes or portraits, like the Testament, I guess, project you did and stuff, but like it's all, you know, it's great work. It's great work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I mean, I'm really trying. You know, I only show work to, I mean, I've made, you know, 60,000 photographs, and I show not many every year. So I try to keep it really tight. So what you see is very purposeful.
Yeah. Well, I want to be mindful of your time. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm getting on a Twitter Spaces now. I have to do Twitter Spaces for my other company. And
so thank you so much. Hopefully this recorded fine and we can share it with everybody. I'll upload it to YouTube somewhere, and then
that'll be cool. Can learn from share me with that, and then please do. That'll be great. Make sure that you get all the recording stuff happening. It's going to happen right after you close this thing out. So just be careful.
Okay.
Don't lose it.
I hope so. I keep my fingers crossed.
All right, man. I'll speak to you soon.
Right. See you, Kris.
Peace.